1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we are good to go, ready to launch.
The stream doesn't look like it's. See if it's working. Okay, cool.
Oh, we need her phone.
Yeah, I don't know what this is about. Live.
He's not been paying attention by accident.
I've not seen this one before. Sure you want to start the stream?
That doesn't work, it's all him.
Yes, I want to start the stream.
Tune all that out. I never get on Facebook anymore. Both sides.
No, I don't think it's working. Sorry, we're having.
It is so nice out there. Oh man, last week was rough. Riding in my night job.
There's no stream preview.
Is winter over?
Well, I mean, we had a little bit last winter. I mean, last weekend.
Yeah.
Vacation.
Yeah. How much weight do you have to put back there?
I put about 250, I guess. Or 60-pound bags.
You use winter tires?
No.
Good, how are you?
That's probably best. Some of us have a face for radio.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. Got two down there.
I did.
Okay.
Face for radio.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
That's after Mr. Lancaster's last outburst.
All right, Mr. Chair, we are audio and video, it appears, so whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. This is the time and place for the regular meeting of the Transportation Commission, City of Meridian. It is Monday, March 5, 2018, approximately 3:34 p.m. I'm David Ballard. I will call the roll. Tracy Hopkins. Absent. Ryan Lancaster.
Present.
Stephen Lewis.
Here.
David Ballard is here. Brent Conseth. I'll get it right one of these times. Absent. Ryan Leslie.
Here.
Ryan Hall.
Present.
David McKinney.
Here.
Brenton Davis.
Here.
Erica Bowen.
Here.
Luke Kavanagh.
Here.
Sean Martin.
Here.
Tony Tisdale. Wanda Jobert.
Here.
Miranda Carson.
Here.
Okay. Item 2, the adoption of the agenda. Any changes, add-on, corrections?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lancaster.
I move to adopt the agenda as printed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Agenda has been adopted. Item 3, approval of minutes from the February 5, 2018 meeting. Any corrections, additions?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt.
I have a motion by Mr. Lewis to adopt. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Old business, item 4A, transportation projects update. Mr. Hood.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I am going to speed through this one this month. Beginning on page 7 of your packet for today, the transportation project updates. There's only a couple that I want to highlight today. So again, that packet starts on, or this item starts on page 7 of the packet. I actually want to jump to page 11 and just cover those couple of things real quick, just to let the commissioners know they should be real proud of your chair. You did a fine job presenting the annual report to the city council on the 27th of last month. Commissioner Lewis, Vice President Lewis, was also present for that presentation. So that is done for this year, or last year, I guess. And then also just wanted to let you know that the council also during that same meeting did forward on your recommendations for transportation priorities to ACHD with no changes. So kudos. They asked a couple questions, but was exactly as you had recommended it to them. So that went off to ACHD last week as well. So I didn't talk about anything else, but there's obviously more projects in there. But if you have any questions, not a whole lot of bolded items this month, not a whole lot of new information in the past 3-4 weeks. But again, if you have any questions on anything that's going on right now or about to come online, be happy to stand for those questions or comments right now.
Any questions for Mr. Hood?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Wesley.
Caleb, do you know if the Pine project is on schedule still?
I don't know what the weather, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, with the weather last week, I don't know if that put them behind at all. They were doing really well, though. I mean, this winter's been pretty mild, and then last week or 10 days have been a little bit more wet than typical. But I think they're still on schedule as far as I know.
Cool, thank you.
Mr. Hood, if I may, not self-serving. When I did the report the other day, I described the commission as saying that we had a baseball term saying we have a rather strong bench. And I described the industries and the professions up here. And I'd simply like to recognize that a number of professions are well represented here. And I also complimented the council for having a youth representative. And that was well received. And they did ask about the priorities, and they were appreciative of our efforts there about passing that on. And they asked about our communications with the Idaho Transportation Department, and I described our process here, that we have an opportunity to meet with or talk with members of those agencies. And they illustrated a project, Mr. Martin. They asked an example of some of the ideas that we have discussed, and I talked about posting signs and having the ability with Mr. Martin and Ms. Bowen here to be able to get information as we discuss it. So I think that's huge. I just wanted to pass along that I appreciate being surrounded by probably, to use my baseball term, little heavier hitters than I may be. So it was a good evening. 4A's been completed. And I did give kudos to Mr. Lewis, saying that he decided that his priority chart should supplant the other priority chart, and we pushed it along, and it was well received. So,
Thank you.
item 4B, 2018 State Highway 69 project follow-up. Ms. Bond.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm Erica Bone with the Idaho Transportation Department. I'm District 3's traffic engineer. Last month, ITD presented the improvements of the State Highway 69 Kuna to Meridian project to the Meridian City Council. This project is necessary to improve safety and traffic operations from Meridian to Kuna along Meridian Road. As part of the project, we'll be installing a median barrier, as you see on this screen. It's the orange median barrier down Meridian Road. We're installing that to improve intersection configuration at Overland and Meridian. The City Council requested ITD provide justification for the installation of that median barrier, and so that's what I'm here to talk to you about, and then I'll be presenting at the City Council's workshop next week as well. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So the City Council asked us two very specific questions. One is, are there currently any southbound left turn crashes at the one business access on the east side of the road? And so if you're looking at this map, if you're coming south of Overland, it's that first access on the east side. It doesn't have a street name, it goes directly into some businesses. But they wanted to know, with that median barrier restricting it, are there currently southbound left turn crashes? And then they wanted to know as well, how does the median barrier improve safety, and is there any crash data to support this as well? So that's what my presentation will cover. So what I wanted to show and talk about first is the existing business access conditions that it has today. I'd also like to be really clear that ITD did not decide to install a median barrier based on existing crash statistics. It was a decision made for future safety at this intersection and for the mobility of the motorists who are using this corridor, traveling both north and southbound on Meridian Road. So I want to explain. So if you go out there today, what you see currently is, first, when you're headed southbound, you have a two-way left center turn lane. That's your refuge for getting out of the through traffic lanes headed southbound. And so a vehicle is able to pull into that, and so that's delineated by the yellow arrows. When a vehicle is stopped there, they have time to pause and to make a judgment call of when there is a safe gap to make that left-hand turn. What they're going to have to observe and to take into consideration before they can make that turn is two northbound through lanes. And then at the bottom of the screen, you see there's a dedicated right-hand turn lane as well. So they're there thinking about 3 points of conflict that they could have when making that turning movement. And like I said, they have that center refuge as well to stop, to wait, and to make a good judgment call. Now, in looking at the crashes, to answer the first question that the City Council had, in the last 5 years, there's only been 3 crashes. So 3 southbound left turn crashes at this intersection. That is awesome. I mean, that is the kind of numbers we actually want to see. This means that that center turn lane is doing its job, that motorists are not being impatient, they are waiting and finding safe gaps. And so this is a good number to see right here. And one that, we don't want crashes to increase in this area. So definitely remember the number 3 for last number of crashes in the last 5 years. So as I said, there's a purpose for why we're actually putting up this median barrier, and it's not to address the existing crashes today. I came in, I spoke with you a couple months ago about the potential to look at modifying the intersection of Overland and Meridian, looking to help with mobility, looking to assist with safety as well. What you see here is the schematic of what this intersection will look like come this summer of 2018. We are able to put 3 through lanes to get you across Overland Road onto the interchange, and then add an additional dedicated right turn lane. Right now, that right turn lane is both a through and a right. So one single vehicle gets stopped at the signal wanting to go through to get up onto the ramp to head on I-84 eastbound, they're blocking the entire lane of traffic. So that right turn lane in and of itself, I think, is a great addition to this intersection for allowing vehicles to flow through it better. To be able to do this and not add any widening to the pavement, because you are developed out here in this intersection, what we looked at and saw is that the existing 2 left turn lanes are underutilized. You don't need 2. There's just not that volume of traffic. And so we were able to reduce one of the left turn lanes, take that one out. So the one remaining left turn lane will be able to serve all of our traffic needs. And we're working with ACHD about signal coordination as well. In addition to that one left turn lane, using that for some of our widening, we're going to take away the 2-way center turn lane as well. That was needed so that this left turn lane could be extended far enough south to make it valuable. So what does this do to the future business access that I've been talking about? So in the future, now, this diagram, the yellow part shows a median barrier, but let's assume the median barrier is not there, and a driver wants to make a left into the business access again. So in the future, the driver will not have a dedicated center turn lane to act as a refuge. What does that mean? That means he is going to stop through traffic. He's going to stop all the southbound through traffic, and there is a high likelihood that there will be a backup of traffic now going through the Overland Meridian intersection. When you don't have a center refuge, and I'm sure as drivers you've experienced this, when you're trying to make a left turn lane or left-hand turn and you don't have a center refuge and there's drivers backing up behind you, you get anxious and you start making riskier decisions because in the back of your mind you're thinking about how all these vehicles are stacking up, potentially how they're going into the, backing up into an intersection. And so you are not waiting as often for that appropriate gap. So while you're getting anxious, while you're trying to figure out how to make this left turn lane, now the road condition is different that you're going to encounter. Before, you only had to observe 3 lanes for different conflict points. Now you have the start of a taper for a left turn lane at the very top. You have 3 through lanes, and then you also have a through and a right turn lane. That through in the right turn lane in and of itself is tricky because now you're not certain, because not everyone uses their blinker, whether that guy is turning right or going straight. So that's an issue in and of itself. With all of these new conflict points to accommodate the new configuration at the intersection of Meridian and Overland, it is absolutely necessary for this median barrier to be there and to restrict those left turning movements at this location. If we don't put it in, I will guarantee you there will be a large amount of crashes that we will start seeing here. And then we're also going to get a lot of congestion issues of backing up those southbound through lanes. The Meridian City Council asked about data and crashes and wanted to see a comparison. So the best example I was able to pull up is Eagle Road and Village Drive. Now, as you'll recall, we no longer allow left-ins into this intersection, and that has to do with these crashes. But this is the closest configuration I could find while it was in existence of crashes that you would see. So let's look at what this configuration looks like. This is actually better than what would be presented in the future business access configuration that I showed you on the last slide. In this area, you actually have a refuge area. So it's a dedicated left turn lane for vehicles to stop and make that decision about whether to pass. Here, they've had 3 through lanes, northbound through lanes on Eagle Road to observe and to make a decision on, as well as a dedicated right turn lane. So this intersection configuration went in 2013. Now, unlike the one on Meridian Road, all of the businesses, everything got constructed in 2013 or started with the construction. It was just empty, bare land, so there was no before this intersection, after this intersection to compare. But with that, you can see the increase in crashes, and I also wanted to show how injuries were increasing, as well as if you put a dollar amount to this. What was this intersection costing Idaho by being open with these left turn lanes? And so in 2013, there was 5 crashes, 2014, 14, 2015, 11, 2016, 17. This top table is just the angle crashes. So that's when in the police report it attributed that crash to a left turn crash, so those T-bone type of crashes. I put a secondary table on the bottom. These I call the secondary crashes. So these are the instances where the person making that left turn was able to speed through a gap that might not have been sufficient, and the person driving northbound had to slam on his brakes so he wouldn't hit the car in front of him. Unfortunately, someone hit him. So all of those secondary crashes are accounted or attributable to these left turn vehicles as well. So now you're adding another 20 plus crashes. Overall, when you take the economic cost of crashes just per the instance, you're looking at close to $6 million. That's a lot of money. And those are a lot of crashes. And from 2012 to 2016, we were at 3. These numbers are way higher than 3. And so it's looking at this type of data that it's imperative, as I said, that the center median barrier gets installed. So with the installation of the median barrier, what does this mean for drivers who want to access that one business approach on southbound Meridian? Well, it means they're going to have to alter their driving patterns, but luckily the businesses in the southeast quadrants of Overland and Meridian, they have really good access at different points. So on Overland itself, there's a right in, right out. It's not a named street, but it's next to that Country Terrace Way that anyone coming southbound on Meridian Road over the interchange or eastbound on Overland are able to use. If you do come southbound on Meridian Road, what you need to do then is pass the median barrier, go over to Calderwood. There is a center refuge there for vehicles to use at Calderwood, and then make the left. They can take Calderwood, and there's a backage road that will take them all the way back there to the businesses. Both of these being much preferable to then having to make a left turn lane in front of 5 different conflict points. Oh, and those are just the 2 access points. So then what to expect? Construction is scheduled for this summer and fall of 2018. These handouts that I provided to you, ITD is going to start going to the businesses all around Overland and Meridian, and they will be handing these out. They'll be handing out extra copies as well for them to give, those businesses to give to their customers. And so inside of this, there's a great large map of showing them how they're able to access things. And this is true too for the residents at Davenport Street who will no longer be able to make the left out. They'll be able to drive down to Calderwood and make an access point there, or be able to access Meridian Road from that point. They can also drive through the subdivision, get all the way back to Stoddard. So there are options. In the centerfold of it, it also shows you a sample of what the barrier image looks like. So it'll be a combination of tubular markers and concrete median barrier. And then there's just some good information for the public to see and understand of what we're doing with the entire project, but also how this affects the intersection at Meridian and Overland, along with the median barrier. This project will improve safety and traffic operations on this busy corridor, so we are really excited to be out there and constructing it this summer. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Questions for Ms. Bull?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one
McKinnon.
quick question if I may. The left turn lane, northbound left turn onto Overland Road, west of Meridian Road, there's a substantial amount of development currently going on,
Okay.
and still a lot of empty land that's likely to be developed in the near future. What ability do we have, or what space do we have to add a second left turn lane in the future if that becomes necessary? Or are we kind of tied in here and we don't really have anywhere to go?
So there's not currently any space to build an additional left turn lane to address those developments. With developments coming up, that's something that we work with Meridian Planning and Zoning to see the development applications, and then we have the option to ask about traffic impact studies. Often the planning and zoning will ask about that, but we can be specific on intersections we think are affected. In looking at developments, often the Idaho Transportation Department will ask developments to mitigate for their own impacts. And so it might be an expense of a developer to look at and figure out how to add that left turn lane back in.
Because I understand exactly what you're saying with, current volumes don't justify 2 left turn lanes, but it's foreseeable that in the near future, we could be back at a point where we do need 2, and ascribing that to one developer could be a difficult task, given that all the land immediately near the intersection is mostly developed. The vacant land is, to the west, and yet that's a traffic movement that could be, directly affected by that development to the west, along with, additional traffic as it grows going toward 10 Mile Road and the interchange in that direction.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. McKinney, it's hard decisions that the Idaho Transportation Department has to make. And so I certainly understand looking at the future, but we don't have a crystal ball of when that future is coming either. And so we are trying to address immediate concerns and questions of how to make this whole intersection safer. And then as we move forward, we'll have to figure out what do we do next. I know just from traveling through the Meridian interchange, we just built that one and it doesn't seem to be functioning quite as well as we had forecasted. There's just astronomical growth. So what we're doing for this intersection, I think, is a interim fix. I know the department knows this isn't the end all be all. But we are trying to fix all of the congestion and mobility concerns that come into our department every day on this one with this project. And then we'll have to figure out longer term, what does that look like?
Okay. Can you just tell me, under current traffic volumes, how far away is it from, justifying 1 lane versus 2? Where do we sit in that range?
I'd have to go back and look at the data.
Okay.
It was a while ago when I did the analysis for this construction project. I know right now in the PM peak and in the AM peak, there's no more than 100 left turning vehicles going through the left turn lanes. Typically, we don't look at 2 left turn lanes as a rule of thumb until you get up to like 200, 250.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Hood?
I have one question and then just a comment. So Erica, thanks for the presentation. I know we have a council member here too, so if you might get some other feedback from him when you make a similar presentation next Tuesday. But I think you have tried to address anyways the things that I heard last month when I know you weren't there, but when ITD was there to present on this. Just one of the things I've heard since in talking with various folks is the intersection at Calderwood. There are going to be more volumes there. I don't know what the volumes are now, but a signal there potentially. Is that on your radar anyways? It's kind of similar to even the dual lefts that you guys were just talking about. I don't know if that's going to be an issue right out the gate, but certainly there's going to be increased volumes at Calderwood and making that left-hand turn there. It's going to be similar to what you showed in the beginning part of your slides with only having the center turn lane and 2 lanes, so you do have a refuge area there. But just with volumes and things, we can kind of see that coming, that may become a problem. Is that something, again, that's just on your radar? We don't want to see any crashes, but is there a number that's too many before you would really look at signalizing that intersection? I know the spacing isn't great either from Overland.
It doesn't meet it doesn't meet our spacing requirements, so I don't foresee us putting a signal there. I would foresee us looking at other options, potentially looking at something like Eagle Road where maybe a signal, I don't know, but utilizing U-turns or things of that method. Some of the things that we're looking at in our quarter plan for State Highway 55 on Karcher. I just don't foresee a signal going in there because it doesn't meet spacing.
And then just the other thing that I wanted to call to the commission's attention, I imagine you read it because everyone got a copy, but in the second paragraph there under background, it talks about, you're listed there, so improvements developed in collaboration with Meridian Transportation Commission. So I just want to make sure that you're good with that and on board with that. So just to call that to your attention in case you lost over it. So thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ms. Blunt. Appreciate it. 4B is completed. 4C, River Valley Street Crosswalk near Co-op. Mr. Martin.
So we did, commissioners, we did go out and do some data collection since our last meeting. We counted pedestrians, traffic volumes, those kind of things. The roadway itself, the request was, if you remember, was for just a marked crosswalk, just painted crosswalk. However, given the speed limit of the roadway and the volume of the roadway at River Valley there, we would not install just a marked crosswalk. It would have to have some kind of enhancement, whether that be a pedestrian hydrant beacon, or I guess we can't use an RRFB anymore, but something, some kind of flashing or something to draw attention to the location. However, when we went out and looked at actual number of pedestrians there, the highest volume we got in 1 hour was only 5 pedestrians. Not typically something where we would go and install something along that line for just 5 pedestrians. I do believe the METCD would call for something more closer to 20 vehicle or pedestrians per hour for like a pedestrian hydrant beacon. One option, this of course we did count the pedestrians in the winter, so one option could be that we could do it again closer to spring, summer, when we would expect to see more activity. That is an option if the commission wishes us to do that, or we could, basically just end the investigation now and just say we don't have enough pedestrians crossing at this location to warrant either a crosswalk or an enhanced crosswalk.
Questions for Mr. Martin? Mr. Lancaster.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Martin, so, what are your thoughts about going back and recounting in the summer?
I think that's kind of where I was leaning. I mean, if we're going to get more pedestrians, I think it would be in the summer months when it's nicer weather, darker a little bit longer. I don't know if we'll get to the point where we see 20 though. But it certainly doesn't hurt to go out and do the same thing. Come here in I guess another 3 months, May, June, July timeframe or something. I know that there are more apartments being built too behind there, which may change things as well. So I'm guessing they would probably cross at the Records intersection if they were to cross.
Mr. Chairman and
Yes.
Mr. Martin, I guess I don't feel a real compelling reason to go back out there and count, but if ACHD were so inclined, I'd be interested in hearing what you counted. I'll ask you a general question about River Valley. Does the Ada County Highway District have any, have you had any discussions or plans in general about the configuration of River Valley Street? So a few things have changed in that neighborhood recently with the extension of Records Avenue and, of course, continued development, near there.
The roadway itself, I don't envision changing. The one thing we have talked about recently is the intersection of River Valley and Records. Currently, it's a all-way stop.
Yeah.
We have had conversation if that is something that we expect will work forever, or if we're going to need to have either a traffic signal. We don't really have the land there for a roundabout, so it'd probably have to be a traffic signal if we were to, if the 4-way stop failed. Or 3-way stop, I should say.
Just get the park, to get the city to donate that park for a roundabout, yeah. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Martin? Mr. Martin, thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, just real quick, it doesn't sound like there's going to be a recommendation. It was if ACHD is so inclined. You want me to just pull this off of the old business items, and if they're so inclined sometime in the summer or fall to report back, or is that?
We just keep it for future projects then, or Mr. Lancaster, you're the one that asked, no, you didn't ask for a revisit, but you'd be curious.
Right, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I said I probably don't need to see a recount, but if ACHD does one, it'd be interesting to hear it. You know, I don't think it needs to stay on our agenda per se, but
Okay,
perhaps you, Mr. Chairman, and Sean and Caleb can, you know, if they recount it, to put that back on the agenda.
if it bubbles to the surface again, we'll revisit it.
Thank you.
Okay. 4C. New business, 5A. Sergeant Arnold is absent again this week, so 5A is completed. We'll move to item 5B, the Lime Bike Share Program. Megan Colford with Lime Bike, I take it.
Yes, let me just grab my props here.
So, Mr. Chair, as she's bringing her props forward, I did email you the end-of-year report from Lime Bike and sent you a link to their website too, so I don't know if, sounds like IT was in before and said you don't actually, your PCs aren't working right now, so if you haven't done your homework, now is not the time because you don't have a PC, but you do have that information at your home PC or whatever if you want to catch back up.
Good afternoon. Yep. Ready? Sorry.
This is your first appearance?
Here in Meridian, yes.
Okay, and before the Transportation Commission?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll hear your report.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today. I actually grew up in Boise, so I am a proud Idaho native. I currently live in the Bay Area in California. I work at Lime Bike, where I've been for about 8 months. So I'm one of the more senior employees at this point, and since I joined there, I've actually thought about how wonderful our system and our products would be for the Treasure Valley. So it has been a personal initiative of mine in collaboration with some of my colleagues to get in touch with many cities in the Treasure Valley, and I'm thrilled to be here today, hoping that we can talk about how we can provide a transportation solution.
Excellent. Well, we have a 39-page report. Let's see what's in it.
Sure, I have a presentation here that gives maybe some highlights from the report,
Very good.
And that can be your bedside reading or something like that.
Okay.
Great. So to get started, Lime Bike is a dockless bike share company. We were founded in San Mateo, California. We've been around for just over a year. So as I mentioned, I've been with them for the greater part of that. So what are we doing? Why are we building Lime Bike? Our goal is to revolutionize urban mobility and to lead in the country for first and last mile transportation. So we want transportation to be more affordable, healthier, more fun, and really work hand in hand with local communities with a subsidy-free solution as you're thinking about transportation in your community. So as I'm sure you are familiar with some of the typical bike share programs, in the past, all of the docked-based systems have been quite costly to communities because of the infrastructure needs of installing the docks, of the bikes themselves. That cost is then put on both the cities as well as the consumers. The docking stations also are somewhat limiting to where users can take the bikes, and it creates inequity in the availability for particular areas of the community. So with that history, we then created our dockless model. As I said, it's at no cost to the city. We want to serve the whole community. We want to be flexible. We want to grow with you. And we're really excited about that and how far we've come in such a short amount of time. So we are the largest dockless bike share company in the U.S. This is a snapshot of where we are currently, and it's probably already outdated with new launches that we've had. The yellow icons are schools, universities that we've launched at, and the green are cities. Just a few highlights in Seattle. With our very first 500 bikes there, we exceeded the city's older docked-based program, their best week ever, in just one day. And I think that's really indicative of how much more convenient a dockless system can be. Similarly, South Bend has been one of our consistently high-performing markets on days that it's not snowing. In the very first week, riders logged 2,500 rides. And you can see that the types of cities we've operated in are large and small. They have a very different character. We really want to work with every kind, and we think at this point we have the history and understanding of how to do that well. So what sets us apart? First, as I mentioned, there's no funding required to operate, expand, and continue the service. It's simple pricing for users, which makes it really easy to sign up and use. We're a well-funded company. We just raised an additional $70 million recently in the past few weeks, which brings the total to over $100 million raised so far. And we're not going anywhere with the footprint that we already have. And we're continually iterating. These two products here that I'll explain a little bit more about are really indicative of the fact there are electric products that we've created quite quickly since being around and are adding to augment our fleet with our regular pedal bikes. So how does it work? It's quite simple. You download the free LimeBike app, which is available on Androids and iPhones. You sign up online, agree to terms of service. It takes less than a minute. And then with your app, you can see the nearest bike. You'll see in the icon on your screen, it will show you whether it is an electric bike, a regular bike, or a scooter, so you can know what exactly you want to find and unlock. You use your phone to unlock whatever bike or scooter you want to ride it wherever you go, lock it up when you're done, and it's all charged through the app itself. It gives you a ride summary similar to an Uber or Lyft experience that you can share and that you can keep and see over time your carbon emissions saved and your calories burned, et cetera, et cetera. So a little bit about our bike. So the regular pedal bike is what is displayed on your screen, and it looks essentially similar to our electric assist bike, other than it doesn't have a battery pack in the back. The lock itself, which is icon number 2, it's a GPS-enabled lock. That is the mechanism that allows you to unlock a bike when you're ready to ride and to lock it up when you're finished. In the basket on a regular pedal bike is a solar panel that actually powers the front light, and it also powers the GPS-enabled lock. Fun fact about our tires, they are airless tires, so they're made of a hard foam. You're never going to have to worry about a flat tire when you're riding. And that's kind of consistent across all of the design of our bikes, is that they're proprietary, they're meant to be maintenance-free. You can't, take it apart or do anything to it with a regular set of tools. We really try to make it as consistent and easy as possible for everyone involved. And we, of course, have safety certifications for all 3 of our products. So Lime E, which I mentioned, it is an electric assist bike. So the max speed, it gets up to about 14.8. The range is about 62 miles, depending on how fast you're going. That would take you quite a ways. And if you've ever ridden an electric assist bike, this is a torque sensor, so you just give it a little, the more you pedal, the faster it'll push you along, and it's a really, really smooth ride. Later on, if you'd like to try it out, you're welcome to. And the batteries themselves are swappable by our team on the ground, that they need to be swapped every 3 or 4 days or so and recharged. Our Lime S, our newest product, we're super excited about that. It is an electric scooter. It similarly gets up to 14.8 miles per hour, and it can go about 37 miles. Our team actually picks these up every night and recharges them overnight, and then deploys them again in the morning. And that's how we make sure that there's always enough juice to get where you want to go. I mentioned a little bit about pricing. For our regular pedal bike, it is $1 for every 30 minutes. There's no membership fee, there's no additional fee. It's every single 30 minutes is just $1. For both of our electric products, it's $1 to unlock, and then $1 for 10 minutes, which is divided by minute, so 10 cents per minute. So it's really affordable. If you ride for 10 minutes on one of these, you're paying $2, which is less than you might pay for an Uber or Lyft, or easier than hopping in your car and finding parking. We additionally have membership options. If you are a power user, then you can get $30 for 100 rides per month. And then for students at campuses, it's 50% off. And then we also have a low-income equity program that is 50% off as well to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. So this is probably the biggest question that you're thinking about is what happens to the bikes? How do we make sure they're where they need to be? How do we make sure you maintain them? We have a full-time operational staff in every single market that we manage. Until recently, I was actually the Bay Area General Manager, so I was the one who was overseeing all of the operations of those teams. I was making sure that we respond to customer service concerns, that we redeploy at locations that we see high ridership, all of that sort of thing that goes along with having a successful program. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week customer service department that is reachable by phone, text, email, and in-app. And we have a 2-hour response time to respond to any concerns or complaints that come through that. And the beauty of Dockless is that we're quite flexible. So we can bring a couple hundred bikes initially. If that seems like way too much or way too little, we can easily adapt, move bikes around, overnight to make sure that we're providing the best service possible. And we also cover all of this. It's part of our basic system, part of our basic model. Again, no cost. It's all included in a deployment. Parking is another big question that folks usually have. So we have a few solutions, and we're constantly iterating on this to make sure that we're providing the best solutions. We are the only Dockless provider to proactively educate users on proper parking, proper safety. We have a YouTube channel with videos that we've produced aimed directly to educate users. We can also geofence particular areas as no parking zones, which is what you see in the screen, the red box. And we've done that at private property request or at city request if there's a particular area that you don't want bikes. We can also identify, as you see on the screen, preferred parking areas in the app that instruct users where we'd like them to park. We have decals that we can place down. We're also looking at doing some sort of gamification in our app so that if you park it well, then your next ride is half off or something of that nature. That's the great thing about being at a startup is we have the resources and energy to try something new, and if it works, then we'll deploy it across the country. And as I mentioned, worst case, if it's parked improperly, our operations team will come and fix it quite quickly. I think one of the best parts, perhaps from your perspective, about our program is that we create, through our GPS-enabled bikes and scooters, we are gathering data about where people ride. We know which intersections they're turning at. We know what bike lanes they're using or not using. As you're making decisions about improved bike infrastructure or changing traffic patterns, we can share with you very specific data as we gather it to help inform that and make sure that you're using the resources where they're most needed and where they're going to have the most impact. We can also share information around environmental impact and all sorts of data. Again, it's part of a partnership with any city. We want to make it a better bike culture for everyone, and we're committed to do that by sharing the data we collect. Of course, privatized, so we're never sharing user data, but aggregated data. An example of one of our successes was in Seattle. I mentioned they had previously had a dock-based system where the docks basically focused around the downtown area. When we first launched, we also similarly focus most of our bikes in the downtown area and, a smattering here and there. Very quickly, we saw that the bikes were being ridden to Columbia City, which is a very demographically diverse and rich neighborhood. You can see in the app, it's kind of on the bottom of the screen. And this community had never been served before by the docking stations. So we adapted. We said, wow, these people like our product. They want our product. Why don't we start deploying more and more bikes there? And now they're one of the best, highest traffic in terms of Lime bike usage in Seattle because we were able to adapt without having to install or uninstall any infrastructure. So what does it mean to partner? We invest in your community. As I mentioned, I'm local. This is very near and dear to me. I certainly want to see us succeed if we move forward. We have a full team that works with local press. My new role is now community affairs, so I work very closely with local community organizations, bike advocacy groups, anyone who might be interested in this to have conversations about how to make it a success. And we always are looking for feedback, and we take input very seriously from the communities that we partner with to ensure that it is across the board, a wonderful thing for the community. I mentioned a little bit, I won't go into this, but we have a very experienced team. We're very well funded. We're part of a few councils and associations. And our proposal to you would be an April or spring launch here. No cost to any of the jurisdictions. We're in contact with Garden City and Eagle and Boise. We've reached out to ACHD. We look forward to collaborating with all of them. We're also in contact with NAMPA and Boise State, of course. We want this to be a regional program. We want to bring mobility services to Treasure Valley, and we'd love to do that with your collaboration. And as I mentioned, what we need is just support. We manage all of the costs, we manage all of the operations, all of the hiring. We just do it with a blessing from the communities that we're in. So with that, here's my information and my colleague Gabriel. Please take it down if you have any follow-up questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions here now.
Very good. I'm sure that there are a couple.
Me. Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions.
Well, go
Thank you
ahead.
for coming. I appreciate you coming here. So Caleb did send this to us last week, and I looked through the annual report, and it was really interesting. And I did notice that Boise wasn't on the map, so I'm excited to hear that you guys are looking at the area. And in case you're wondering, that's my bike over there. I ride everywhere, too. What's that?
It's not Lime.
It's not lime and yellow, though. So I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
What kind of bike volume are you anticipating in this area?
Yeah, so we estimate about 1 bike per 100 residents. So I think across the whole region, we could start around, what would that be, like 5, well, initially start with 500 bikes early in the spring and then get that up. Eventually, we'll hopefully hit that saturation point. And I think with the summer, we'd see a lot of great ridership and increase as necessary. That would be just for pedal bikes, and then I think we would supplement that with several hundred scooters and a few hundred electric assist bikes as well.
Okay. And how about distribution? Would you try to allocate the bikes, per capita to each city? So Nampa would get X bikes, Meridian, Boise.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because this would be like our first regional launch, all happening at once. I think if cities wanted to know that they always have 200 bikes in their jurisdiction, we could make that happen. Alternatively, we would make sure that initially we're providing bikes at all of the key downtown areas, all of the key business districts, all of the key parks, recreation areas, and then observe the data and adapt as necessary. So it could be either, a number of bikes per city, or it could be a overall number.
Right. Because I could see maybe the bikes all end up collecting in Boise. because that's where most of the people are, and a lot of people go down there, and maybe they Uber home or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if there's some sort of plan, or if you guys do this in other areas where bikes seem to collect in one area, where you maybe redistribute them?
Yeah, definitely. That's part of what our operations team does. You can imagine in Seattle, the bikes end up at the bottom of hills. So we have the team that brings the bikes back up the hills, and yeah, I think it would be no different. We'd, we have, like I said, the data and the tools that can help us map out where to deploy bikes.
Okay. And then on the electric assist devices, is there a way to see on the app, like the charge level of the bike or the scooter?
We can see it internally. Our team has like our operations app that shows it. For a consumer, a bike will not unlock if it is below a certain threshold, and that's to ensure that you don't get stranded with an out-of-battery scooter or bike. And I believe that's at 15% left, and our team swaps batteries or tries to at 25% and below so that you're never in that situation. But if you are, you wouldn't be able to take a low-battery bike or scooter.
Okay. And then I was thinking here about the possible negatives of this program. Do you have any issues with people maybe collecting these bikes, not sharing them, like they park them at home?
Yeah.
And it's their
we
own
like
personal.
to call them hoarders. Yes.
It's their own personal means of transportation.
Yeah. People do try that. What our team does is we'll knock on a door where we know a bike is. That we have the GPS data, and so if we can see it, for the most part, people are like, yeah, okay, I'll give it back. We've heard some great stories about people who do that because there's not enough bikes. So I think the best way to mitigate that is to make sure that we have that right saturation level. If people are worried there's not going to be a bike tomorrow to ride to work, then they're going to be more likely to keep one for themselves. If they know and can depend on it, then we don't really have to worry about it.
Right. So I think that just my last comment is if you guys are willing to share that aggregated non-confidential and non-personal data with the cities, especially ACHD. So I'm also on the bike advisory committee for ACHD, and I see that data being invaluable for where people are riding, you know. Crashes, maybe crash correlation information with the bike volumes is really good. So
yeah, I mean, there's such growth right now. We'd love to be part of that, to be able to help grow smarter with that data. Absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Other comments or questions for Ms.
Mr. Chair?
Colbert?
If I could ask a question, how long does the battery usually last?
The scooters, it depends on usage, but we pick them up every night and recharge them, and we find scooters that have anywhere between like 50% and 10% left. If they've really been used, they might be dead at that point. We try to pick them up before that. The bikes, the batteries usually last 3 to 4 days, depending on how long people are riding them.
Joe Bear.
So the data, it will be shared at no cost?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then what speed is it of the bike? Is it a 3-speed or?
The electric assist is currently a 1-speed, but we're developing a bike with multiple speeds. Our regular pedal bikes are either 3 speeds or 8 speeds.
And do you have an age limit that the person needs to be to ride the bike?
Yes, for all of our bikes, it's 18 or older. For our regular pedal bikes, if you're 13 to 18, you agree to ride with parental consent.
Okay.
I have a follow-up on Mr. Leslie. He asked if people collect the bikes. Do some bikes just disappear?
We haven't, not often. Yeah, we've gotten really good, our team has gotten really good having boots on the ground that are monitoring that. So I haven't seen that. I think probably in some of our bigger cities, that's a possibility. I don't imagine that would happen here, and if it did, we would figure out something to do or have more bikes to make up for that.
I was just curious if somebody thought that was kind of neat and they needed some parts.
Yeah, they're hard to take. Every once in a while, we do have people try, and then they try to take it apart. But like I said, all of our parts are proprietary, so they give up, and then we find a bike back in circulation that has like a few dings or scratches where they tried to do something, and then it wasn't worth the effort. It's so cheap to ride.
Okay.
So
we are the Transportation Commission, so a couple of questions. What are you asking us to do for you today? And you said you were reaching out to other agencies. You have other presentations. I'm assuming you have other presentations with Meridian City Council, or?
Yes, that's the hope. So with all of you today, I'd love your recommendation to the council to listen to this and to move forward with it. And then if any of you need to be involved in the process moving forward, then I'd love that as well. But for now, this is us inviting you to work together so that we can be part of this larger endeavor.
I have a question.
Mr. Hall?
So, I mean, I can see your bikes ended up on private property, public property. I mean, what have you done in other cities to get their endorsement to allow that to happen? Because, I mean, there's obviously bike racks at, private businesses and colleges and stuff to be able to park some of this stuff. But, I mean, what have you done? I mean, obviously we can recommend to ACHD, yeah, you can park your bikes on ACHD property or City of Meridian property, but how have you addressed that with other cities and get that endorsement and approval to do so?
Yeah, and different cities have different requirements of what they like to do. Some cities have done an RFP, some cities have done a permit, some cities have said, get a business license and you can operate. And with all of those, it's the same to us because we have the city's blessing and we still share that data. We also are in many cities where we're part of a pilot, and I could see a world in which all of the cities in the valley say, we'd like to be part of this year-long pilot where we'll see how it goes and then decide after whether it's a long-term solution. In terms of private property, part of what we do in advance of our launch and then after the launch as well is reach out to private property owners, to businesses, if there's a large corporate campus or hospitals, St. Luke's, St. Al's, reach out to them and say, we'd love to park them here and your employees. We can have your employees ride for free. We really do try to educate to make sure that all of the people who are impacted know who to reach if there's a problem, what the system is, how to use it, and that's something that we do in every city.
Mr. Lancaster?
Mr. Chairman, so I think this sounds interesting, but I guess I'd be interested in hearing from this side of the room. Yeah, Councilman Cavanagh, I'm interested in, you're representing the city council here, so what are your thoughts about this, and what questions or concerns or likes or dislikes or whatever, what are your thoughts about all this?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lancaster, thank you. As you know, I tend to not pipe in and let the process play out, although I have had some questions that I've been kind of writing down in hopes that maybe I'd have a chance to chime in. So I think from a city council perspective, there's a couple of things that at least I would take into consideration. And Commissioner Hall brought it, I think, right to the forefront. What happens if the management at the village says, we don't want these bikes on our property? What happens if West Data says, we don't want these bikes in our schools? What happens if ACHD says, we don't want this on our right-of-way? To me, I think those pose substantial concerns about the city being involved in the support of a project like that. I think any time that we can find opportunities for our citizens to get to and from without having to add congestion to the roads, I'm always interested in hearing about that proposal. Full disclosure, I also sit on VRT's board of directors, and I see Mr. Foch is here with Boise Green Bike. That is a tax-funded program that's in our community. What I would want to know what this does better, more, or different than to a program that we already have established. How could what Boise Green Bike replicate in Meridian? What would the cost to our citizens be to offer something like that? Those are the questions that I have contemplated through this process, and I think it's important. Lime Bike contacted me in November, December, and we've had a couple of discussions, and I've talked to some other council members in other municipalities who've had similar discussions. I think that my hope was to encourage this presentation to occur, to hear what our Transportation Commission thought first before we brought it to the City Council for further discussion and potential approval.
I'd love to just respond
There's
to a
a lot
couple
there.
of the questions
Sure.
or comment. Yeah, sure. So back to, I will clarify. So knowing that there are all sorts of entities involved in any launch, we want to launch with approval, acknowledgement, support from all of those entities. So certainly school districts are important, the village, any sort of district, homeowners associations, counties if that's important, which it is here. So we would not also want to launch if we didn't have approval from those big players that you mentioned. In terms of working with a docked base or semi-dockless system, we are in several other markets where there is docked alongside dockless. Our perspective is the more people you get on bikes, the better it is for everyone. The safer it is for drivers, the safer it is for riders. We think there's a world in which the different products can work side by side. We've seen data where having our electric assist bikes and our electric scooters actually gets more people on our regular pedal bikes as well. So there's network effects there. I think we won't be able to see the true impact of how it will work in side by side with Boise Green Bike until we're here, but I'm optimistic that it would be a benefit to everyone.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kavner.
A couple additional questions. Now I'm going to get on my soapbox. Can you share with the commission how your company has responded to private businesses not saying that they don't want your product on their property?
I'll give a couple examples. One, in South San Francisco, which was the first Bay Area market that I launched, and apologies, I'm trying to make sure I'm reaching everyone in the room.
You can talk to the commission. You don't need to look to me. It's
okay. Genentech is a major biotech company that's in South San Francisco. We launched in the city. Bikes were ending up on their private property. They reached out and said, hey, what's going on here? And we had tried to reach out without making that contact. Through our bikes actually ending up there, we started a process of piloting, getting in touch. It was really an education opportunity for them because they hadn't been involved in the city's discussions. And so it was a little bit of a longer process, but whereas initially they were, I think, a little bit caught off guard, we've now entered into a formal agreement with them, and it's a symbiotic relationship with the city. So that's one example of, I think, what has gone well. In terms of who has not wanted this on their property, that's more often we hear from very small businesses who don't maybe have great parking or small neighborhood communities. What we do there is we really try to work with them we can designate it, we can geofence and say no parking here. We can educate users because we can see on our end who was the last user to bring a bike there and ask them, please don't park there. It's all about having that open conversation with whoever is inquiring or whoever is concerned.
Chairman, additional question, if
Yeah.
I may. Actually, this is a question for Ted. Ted, I know our code prohibits vehicles from being parked on one location for more than 3 days. I don't know if something like that has to extend to bicycles or if that's something that is contemplated.
Chair, Councilmember Kavner, thank you. Let me turn this on. Thank you. It's a really good question. I've been writing down some questions of my own. I think we've got a lot we need to learn. In addition to that question, I mean, that's where ACHD needs to get involved. The issue of motorized scooters and bicycles on some of our pathways, we may allow them. Our easements say that that's for non-motorized purposes. I mean, those are all issues that I think we need to identify and do some research. So I don't have the answer to your question, but I would encourage maybe that since you are here, you're trying to get to city council, maybe we can go through the list and be prepared with some answers. So how does that sound?
Mr. Chairman, and
Mr. Kavner.
just one additional comment. And the reason why I ask is I know that opponents of your business model really cite that these bikes kind of become a litter or a nuisance in the community. So whatever, again, whether today or should you come before the city council, what your business model allows for addressing that in real time.
Sure, and Mr. Chair, if I may, in terms of the 3-day period, if a bike is sitting idle for 3 days, it's not making us any money either, so we don't want that. We can monitor if bikes are moving or not and have real-time data of how to move them so that they aren't becoming that nuisance or litter. There are a lot of models of bike share out there. They all have pros, they all have cons. What we're committed to is that any of the issues or concerns that come with a dockless model, we're committed to addressing that and to working together and to moving forward and making it a success over time.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Hood? Excuse me. Hood or Leslie? He had his hand up first.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out, I have been not only talking with Megan, but with also our Parks Department. So Kimberly Warren is here from our Parks Department. So some of the issues that Mr. Baer just brought up, I'm not even sure what our ordinances allow with motorized bikes. I know the city of Boise's addressing some of that too, but I just wanted the commission to know, and with legal as well, we have a draft service agreement MOU that we're beginning to review and have some concerns on. I do want to ask one question before I turn the floor back over. And I mentioned this in just one of our email communications. Exclusive operator. And we've talked a little bit about ACHD too, and the city really doesn't control the right-of-ways. That is the Ada County Highway District, and I understand you're talking with them too. But what does that clause really mean in that agreement to be an exclusive operator? We couldn't stop somebody from riding another bike or even bringing another bike program like this to town. So what does that clause really mean for the city to enforce? Or is that more of an advertising thing, like we would help you get the word out, or
Yeah,
trying to kind of understand?
That's a good question. In terms of an exclusive operator, the goal with that is really for the city to have one entity that they can talk to and for, depend on and know that the program, at least for if it's a pilot or if there's a time, that Lime Bike is the one who's committed to a service level, who's committed to a certain number of bikes, who you can reach out to if there's a problem. What we've seen in a few of our other markets where there's been multiple operators is that some of our competitors haven't really held up their end of what we have been doing, and it ends up being a burden for all dockless bike share because it looks bad. What we see in places like South Bend, where we're the only operator, is that the mayor and the council and all of the departments there, they can come straight to us if there's an issue. They know who we are, we're in it together. So that's really what that clause is about.
I have a follow-up to that question then. Are you providing money to those jurisdictions to get that exclusivity then, or is there some type of financial support there?
Not currently. What we've talked about in some jurisdictions is if a need arises, our bikes don't need bike racks, but helping install more bike racks if necessary. If the data that we collect shows there's some infrastructure development, we'd be open to talking about partnering in that. Down the road, we'd be open to talk about possible revenue sharing, but currently we're not doing any of that.
Okay, so there's no, you're not providing any funding to any like colleges or cities or anything, and they're not, and vice versa, you're not receiving any from any municipality or anything, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
Sure, Bear.
I guess, and I don't know if it's so much for the Lime Bike, but would the city then have to do a competitive process to select then if it was going to be an exclusive vendor?
If I may,
Yes.
What we recommend is to do a pilot program. And like I said, that can be 6 months, that can be a year, however long you want. That gives you the opportunity to work with us, see what our model is, see how it works. And then after the fact, if you'd like to do an RFP, if you'd like to extend a program with just us, if you'd like to open it up and do a permitting process, any of that is available to you, but you will have data and experience to back up any decision you make.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
2 final questions. I don't know if you're able to share, but are you profitable in your markets that you're in?
Before the winter, there were a few markets that we were profitable in or close to. Now with our new electric products, we are much more quickly on the path to profitability in many markets. We anticipate by June or shortly thereafter, in quite a few of our markets will be profitable.
And then my final question is, have you withdrawn from any markets?
No. Mm-mm.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Tisdale.
I have a question from the rider's viewpoint. If you're riding and something happens to the bike, are you responsible to replace
Yeah, the terms and conditions, and it's available on our website, and I'm happy to share it, state that our team is committed to monitoring bikes and making sure that they're safe and rideable. Users also agree to do an inspection of the bike so that they're not getting on something if you get hit by a car, that would be awful, and you would certainly not be liable for damages to the bike. No, we would be worried about your health and safety, and we would not, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a couple. Did you?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions, but if you'd like to go.
I'll wait.
Okay. Just, first of all, a comment. Frankly, I think this is a good idea, and I think we have very little to lose. I love to see a market-based solution to problems that doesn't require the city or any government agency to shell out money. I recognize that there are potential issues that have to be resolved, but it looks to me like, why not find a way to do it? And the great thing also is that your model sounds like it's basically kind of a big experiment of a sort, because you spread bicycles all over and see where they go, and that's just enormously interesting to me. Now, does your app also include a bike lane map? Does your app include maps showing best places to ride a bike in any given area?
It currently does not have any sort of capability to specify bike lanes. What we do have on our bikes is a phone holder so that you could use the Google Maps version, and I know that's in beta for bikes. And if you, as a city, as a commission, have bike lane data, we could certainly look at overlaying that in our system. I think that would be a great solution to safe riding, but we currently don't have anything like that.
Okay, great. And of course, the liability issue was brought up. And of course, I'm not just a highway person, I'm also an attorney. And so obviously that I think of that and I'm concerned. One concern is this: if we have the city or any other governmental entity endorsing a particular company as a sole provider of a particular service, then there's a potential blowback of liability on the city, and that would be a concern for me, or on ACHD or in any other entity, because of course, no matter how much we want bicycle riding to be safe and so on, the reality is accidents are going to happen, as tragic as they may be. So that's a concern, and obviously that's something that'll have to be dealt with. Let me just end with one final question. I read through the packet that was sent out, and one thing I notice is that, and this isn't intended to be a trick question, but I'm just curious, how do you calculate how many trees are saved by riding bicycles? Because I'm not aware that trees are used in manufacturing bicycles. Automobiles don't use trees for fuel. How does riding a bike save a tree?
That's a great question, and I am not on our data team to be able to answer that with perhaps what detail you might want. I would guess that it is a calculation of the carbon emissions, the CO2,
Except that trees use CO2.
Right.
So CO2 is not a poison for trees anyway. So
yeah.
Just curious how that was calculated.
Yeah, I can look into it. I've done a lot of these presentations and have not gotten that question, so I'm curious now too.
I'd be interested to hear how that's calculated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did just want to jump in on the liability. We do have an indemnification clause in our service agreement for the city, and we have full liability coverage, personal property damage, umbrella, all of the likes that we usually work with city attorneys to work through. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions. I was thinking more like the attorney that I am. So, the competency of the writer. How do you figure out? Now, it seems kind of naive or simple that you can ride a bike, but maybe some people are a little new to it, or they just don't know how to facilitate, or particularly electric bike. Mm-hmm. So how do you figure that out?
Yeah, well, there is a scooter if you don't want to get on a bike. But the electric bike, it's just the same. There's no throttle. It just kicks in when you start pedaling, so there's no difference. We do get feedback that folks who ride our bikes are people who have not ridden in quite a few years. And it is true what they say, that it does come right back. And our bikes are designed to be easy to ride. They're like a cruiser style, as you can see. They're the measurements are designed to fit a wide variety of body types. So we've had some people on our team who have relearned how to ride a bike on our bikes, and we've heard from customers that they've done the same.
But if somebody totally, a stranger to a bike and has this app and decides to jump on and take off, how do you stop that person?
Well, we wouldn't stop them, and if they are eager to ride a bike, we'd love it to be on one of our bikes. So
Okay.
that would be, I think that could be a great thing if more people who didn't know how to ride a bike got on our bikes.
Okay. You mentioned personal liability and property damage coverage, but the bike rider themselves, and something fails on the bike, and worst case, who's insured?
We insure if they have any injury. We have bodily injury insurance, and we also are covered. As I mentioned, we are touching bikes regularly and making sure that they're in good working order, and users also agree that they'll do the same. To date, in all of our markets, we haven't had anyone who the bike has fallen apart underneath them. So,
Okay. And other jurisdictions, how are you categorized? You're not a carrier, you're not a taxi. I'm just kind of curious, what category do you fit in when you go to the city and say, I want a permit or a business license? And what hoops are you jumping through?
I think it depends by city, but some cities have a bike share or bike company or an overall transportation umbrella. It depends on governance of the streets, whether we're a street vendor or a transportation provider. So I think it varies by location.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Ms. Colford? Mr. Lancaster, you have one more?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but my comment is I'm reminded during presentations like this that I don't have any entrepreneurial knack at all, that I would have never thought of something, like any of these things. This is why I work for the government, I guess, but.
Okay.
I have one comment.
But I think it sounds like an interesting idea. I'm neither interested in putting businesses that are in town already out of business, nor, whatever. I think competition's good. I think it's an interesting idea. I'm not sure that and if I were asked, I guess I wouldn't stand in the way of the project. And, for you guys that have been on the commission long enough, you probably know that that's about as strong as an endorsement as Commissioner Lancaster could give. So I guess that's my thoughts and after hearing the presentation. And also, you attorneys, don't scare Commissioner Davis over there. You got into your lawyer talk, and so,
But he wants to go to law school, I hear.
Oh, he may not after.
So how you had to.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to the program. I guess the only thing I would be opposed to is any type of exclusive agreement. I think the free market needs to bear itself out on anything that comes to here. So that would just be my comment, so.
Okay. Mr. Hood, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, maybe just a couple things regarding timing. So even just based on those last couple of comments, I didn't hear a ringing endorsement. I didn't hear too many concerns necessarily either, though. But just moving forward, and I think I even put it in your packet for today, we were targeting next Tuesday at City Council. I did talk with both the clerk and mayor's office staff, and it's not going to be possible next Tuesday to get Lime Bike on the agenda. The council has another meeting, back-to-back meetings, and some other things they need to get through on that. But I guess just a path forward, and I'm looking both at the chair and the rest of the commission as well as Ms. Colford. Where do we want to go from here? I know you wanted to do Tuesday. I just don't. That's not very. I was kind of seeing how this went today, and it was an hour here, and there's just no way. I don't think it would do you or the council any good to do an abbreviated 10-minute type of a presentation. I guess the other thing back to the chair would be kind of based on some of those last comments. We obviously have interest from other operators in our area. I've talked to Zagster too, which is another similar bike share operator. I don't know how serious they are. They aren't here now. This seems pretty serious. They're here, product. But I guess a question again back to the commission, do we want to hear from anybody else that's interested in this? An RFP, I'm not saying we do an RFP, but some type of a call for proposals. It's maybe a little more informal, realizing that government should get out of the way and not be, driving this thing. But it's just some thoughts about next steps and where everyone would like to be. So, and go. April, I saw April on your slide and I went, oh, I don't know. Again, can we, or do we want to stop you? I don't think so. But if we're going to try to have an agreement done by, so you can roll out in April, I just don't know how feasible that is.
Do you want to make a...
Everything I can to move things forward, but so. Those are my thoughts. We're definitely going to work with her to get on an agenda in the next couple of weeks at the latest. But I wanted to just kind of put that out there too. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could follow up on it was on, now it's on again, okay. Follow up on Caleb's point. We're doing a similar process with Verizon Communications for small cells, and they're trying to deploy this machinery within Ada County, with CUNA, City of Boise, same jurisdictions. And as this is coming together, as Verizon as a vendor is reaching agreement with each city, it's becoming easier for Meridian to say, yes, we want to be a part of this. We want to be on the same terms and conditions that you have with these others. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be a leader, but I'm also saying there's comfort in numbers knowing that we're all in this together. And I would put that out as perhaps an approach that you might want to take is, hey, when Boise's on board and CUNA's on board, Meridian, they're going to be asking, where are these Lime bikes? That's where, as a community, I'd rather be than being the place where they all call heck, and you have to come get them. So, anyway, just a point as far as process is concerned.
Shall we discuss what recommendation, endorsement, resolution, the blessing that we might want to give her? What's the appetite of the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lewis?
I'd be comfortable if the commission were to endorse a pilot program, as we've heard this afternoon, with the comment that Commissioner Hall had about not being, or rather being cautious about exclusivity.
Okay. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm inclined to agree. I think we have very little to lose as a city by allowing a new kind of a business to try out the market and see how it works, because it would be, assuming it works, it would be a benefit. And so long as there are, some basic safeguards in place that have to do with, liability to the city and other governmental agencies, and that there's a business category in which they can logically operate in the city, in which they can, get the permission under existing rules, because otherwise new ordinances would have to be put into place to allow this kind of a business if it doesn't fit any of the other categories that currently exist. I think that the other categories already do exist, however. I think it would be appropriate for this commission to recommend or to provide a recommendation to City Council to, as was said, authorize a pilot program, at least to allow it. But again, I would agree, not with any kind of specific recommendation or exclusivity.
Okay. I cut off a comment over here.
I would concur with what Commissioner McKinney just said, along with what the concerns Mr. Baird had about ordinances, about bikes parked on the sidewalk or private property. The attorneys would have to deal with that. But I would like to send this to City Council. This is no cost to us, and it's great for getting people out there. And every study has shown that the more people you get on bikes, the safer it is for bikers. So,
okay.
I would endorse it.
So what are we giving her as a bottom line here?
I would say a green light to go to the city council with the same presentation.
Okay?
With our endorsement.
Yeah, with our endorsement.
Mr. Hall, you have something to add?
Oh, concur,
Okay,
endorsement.
all right. So, sounds like we would like, or you have our endorsement or encouragement to make the same presentation to city council, but it sounds like you've already been engaged with legal, other jurisdictions that have control, and explore what it is that you can develop. So, is that a fair summary? Okay. I appreciate you coming, an exciting project. Like Mr. Lancaster had said, I wouldn't have thought of this, but somebody gave you $70 million, so say something. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Well, and this is your first time here, but you're welcome to come back to another day. Thank you for coming and visiting with us.
Your endorsement means I get to take more trips home, so thank you. I get to come more
Okay.
often.
All right, all right. Safe travels.
You're going to leave those there so we can ride around, right?
I'd like to see if they have enough horsepower to get me up a small hill.
Okay, item 5B. Staff communications, item 5C, Mr. Hood.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't know that I have anything to necessarily highlight. The staff communications this last month, there's only a couple, and you already saw one of them today. Ms. Bowen already presented on update to that project that's planned for later this year. And just another one, and I contacted that individual back, and I don't know if she's contacted ACHD or not, but that's on page 13 in your packet. So I don't really have a lot to add besides what you can read for yourself on that page.
Mr. Hood, excuse me, is there other comments about Ms. James' letter there on 13, or no?
So, Mr. Chair, again, I responded and have not heard back after I initially responded. So I don't know if there's any action. It was just more maybe.
Just an issue of cut-through traffic?
Yeah. Reread it, reread it, and just make sure. And I can zoom in a little bit if you'd like. And I don't know, it's a pretty new project, so it may actually not be, Google Earth may not be.
It's in there. There.
Here's the neighborhood. If I get the right.
It's the southeast corner of Paramount.
No, isn't it,
Sorry.
isn't it McMillan and Meridian Road?
It's on right.
Yeah, there we go.
The other.
The one.
So.
So it's,
You at?
Mr. Chairman Caleb, it's this bigger loop around this undeveloped corner.
On the Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
So this is.
That's the
Yeah.
one.
So I was thinking of a different one. I'm sorry.
Cagney right there.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure this is the intent of this commission, but I learn of all sorts of new cut-throughs through neighborhoods in my responsibilities here, yeah.
You should look at Google Maps more.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or ways, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was just curious if any follow-up. So, item 5C, have we completed our discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I guess my question on this one is, you know, we periodically do get these cut-through complaints and requests to do something, and, you know, we can't do anything, but Mr. Wasson at ACHD seems anxious to do anything that we send him. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Sean, have you know, has this been brought to you guys? It sounds like Caleb sent them to you, and, you know, are you aware of this or have any plans to do your cut-through study here?
Yes, Commissioners, I do believe this person has been in contact with Mr. Wasson already, and he has started the ball rolling. I'm just trying to read her what she's asking for exactly. The road that I think what she says people are cutting through, I think is actually the loop road that goes from McMillan to Meridian. I don't know if they're really cutting through Cagney, which is where she resides. The problem with the road, the loop road that goes from Meridian to McMillan, is there's no houses actually fronting the road. And typically we don't traffic calm roadways with no front on residential housing. But John is in touch with her, and he'll figure out exactly what she's asking for.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd just be interested in hearing, you know, Caleb, if you hear back, or Sean, if ACHD hears back. I can see your point, and, you know, like you say, there's no houses that front it. It acts like a collector road. I don't know, if there's more information to be shared, I'd be interested in hearing it, I guess, so.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, and
ahead.
I'll work with Sean and John and see what come about. I just was looking at my sent emails, and I did respond on Friday, February 9th, and just essentially said there's a transportation commission that meets every Monday at 3:30 at City Hall. If you'd be interested in attending either the March 5th or April 2nd meeting, explain your concern and what you are seeing, let me know, and I'll add you to the agenda. And I haven't heard back since then. So sounds like there's been some communications. I don't know if city came first. I think this one actually came through the mayor's office, not directly to me, but she may have contacted ACHD first or after that email and is working that angle. But yeah, if something comes about, bring that back so you know kind of what's in the works, if anything.
Okay. Very good. Item 5C, I have a check through it. Future meeting topics at 6. Okay. Item H, I'd like to see move up, but I'll be patient. Still have another year and a half on this committee. All right.
At least.
Maybe, as I told the mayor, you know, God willing, I might be here next week or next month. All right. Next meeting date is April 2. And do I have a motion, or is there anything else to bring before the commission before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Mr. Kavanaugh.
Commissioner Ballard.
Yes, sir.
I'll be brief because I know the hour is near. I just wanted to echo a couple things that Commissioner Ballard said at the city council meeting. Thank you for all you do for our community, and I just wanted to specifically thank Commissioner Ballard. Did a great job of representing the commission at the annual report. You do a great job of kind of encompassing in a very brief amount of time all this body accomplishes over the past year. I enjoy your thoughtful conversations. I will not lie, I have stolen some of your questions that you have asked in meetings and asked them myself to make myself appear to be more intelligent on the issue. So thank you for your great work for our community. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for your kind words. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. We're done. There was a motion and a second, and a vote all at once.
Okay.
Stick that in your pipe, Robert Rules of Order, huh?
And smoke it.